So welcome everyone. I'm Romy, Programs Officer at the ACIE, and I'm very thrilled to kick off the first Fireside chat of the motivation program for this year. I hope you're as excited as I am to get to meet Karl Naim, co-founder and CEO at Purpl. Hello, Karl. Thank you for being here, and I'm sure that your story will actually inspire all those aspiring entrepreneurs in this room.
Do we need the mics or is it clear or?
We're fine.
Yeah, it's
I
fine.
think we need it for the
live
live stream. Yeah.
From the live stream.
Yes.
Great.
So to introduce a bit Karl, Karl has 17 years of experience in tech, finance, and entrepreneurship. He previously worked at USEK, Goldman Sachs, and Mubadala before turning into the entrepreneurial journey and co-founding 3 startups, tech startup, but in different fields and industries. He holds an MBA from London Business School, and we're thrilled to get to meet Purpl, to introduce Purpl, a startup that is revolutionizing the world of currency exchange. Well, Purpl brings a seamless and cost-effective solution for cashing out fresh USD instantly, anytime and anywhere, all with 0 fees. So without further ado, let's dive into the fascinating fireside chat with Karl and explore how, with his team, they're changing the game in the world of financial transactions. So welcome, Purpl. Hi, Karl.
Hi again. Thanks for being here. On what is it, on Thursday? Sorry, I lose track of time because there's no weekend. So thanks for being here. For those who are online, also thanks for joining.
We're very happy to have you with us. Can you tell us a bit about Purpl?
Sure. May I ask who's heard about Purpl first? If you've seen us anywhere online, who's seen us online? Okay, who's seen us offline? Looks like offline is doing better than online, which is surprising. Great, so maybe before seeing what Purpl is, I'll start with the why Purpl. I think it's important for you to understand why we decided to start it. The why behind Purpl is simply following the crisis that we've all experienced. And the fact that most of us became unbanked since 2019 for a country that used to pride itself for their banking sector. I was living in Paris at the time. Well, technically I was living in Stockholm before I moved to Paris. And every time I was coming back to Lebanon, a lot of people were asking me, can you bring money with you for my family and my friends? I was surprised to hear that people still carried cash. I was like, can't you transfer online or Western Union and all of that? Western Union is very expensive. Online, there's not many options. So the main drive behind the Purpl initiative, which were 3 co-founders who decided to bring that to life, was how can we help Lebanon in that time of need, given that Lebanon relies a lot on remittances coming from abroad. I'm sure many of you have family abroad, or at least we always pride ourselves by saying the Lebanese diaspora is 15 million worldwide and there's 5 million Lebanese. Is how do we facilitate for that diaspora who wants to be connected to Lebanon to send money back home instead of doing it by carrying cash or the traditional way. So really the why is one, we wanted to help, even though I lived most of my life abroad. I'm originally Lebanese, and we wanted to find a way to say enough is enough, and really go head to head with the monopoly that has been existing in Lebanon for many, many years. So that's the why. The how, Purpl was. How do we do that? Because obviously starting something from scratch is never easy. Trying to do something for Lebanon is even more suicidal. A lot of people were thinking, and raising money actually to start Purpl was very, very hard. But the how, we've just literally decided to put an end to the monopoly model that the likes of Western Union have with an exclusive agent in Lebanon, which is OMT, MoneyGram with Cash United. What can we do differently? And first it was trying to understand why is there a monopoly. I mean, it only happens in Lebanon. You look at any other countries in the world, there's no real monopoly on remittances. There's many players that open the market and that share that market. So we decided to build what we call an aggregator. So a marketplace in some ways. Like today, Total is a marketplace for restaurants, right? You can order from multiple restaurants on the same platform. We wanted to build an aggregator and open the Lebanese corridor to new players. And most of these players are digital players that came also gained in size and adoption during COVID. You don't need anymore to go to a Western Union shop to send money, bring cash. You can do that all of that from your phone, connect your card or bank account from abroad. So that was the first differentiator. Let's open the market to new players. Let's not follow a monopoly model. And let's try to democratize the remittances. Let's give as many options for a sender to send money back home versus forcing them to send it via one channel. And then we also realized what was missing in Lebanon is that a lot of the cash-out agents are very old school, brick and mortar. You know, everyone has an OMT that's, you know, they sell phones and they do OMT on the side. So how do we make digital players from abroad speak to local players here that don't have the technology, that don't have that drive, that don't have that innovation? So we had to really be the technology piece in the middle, the piece of the puzzle that connects those two type of players. And that's what we did, so that's really how we started. And we've been live since February of this year. It took us a long time to get our license from the central bank. As you can imagine, it wasn't easy for a new player to come in and try to disrupt the existing model. But eventually we did it. So that's so Purpl in a nutshell. It's just a way for people to send money from abroad, for you to receive it on your Purpl wallet. And today the first service we launched, and we're the first ones to do that actually in the region, is what we call making banking infrastructure available to the unbanked. So today you can actually cash out from an ATM without having a card, without having a bank account. So that's the power of, part of our mission is to enable financial inclusion. How do we let people who do not have access to basic financial services be able to use our wallet, be able to get access to money and eventually pay at merchants? So the next feature we're launching very soon is payment at merchants. Also, you can pay on the POS machine without a card using Purpl. And that's what we've launched today. So that's Purpl is an easy way for you to receive money. One, it's cheaper for your sender. And second, you also won't pay any fees when you want to cash out. So you cash out $10 today. So that's Purpl in a nutshell.
Very interesting. I guess you could understand what are the initial goals and aspirations behind Purpl also. Well, during an economic crisis, access to funding and managing finances can be very challenging. How did you secure initial funding for your startup?
The easy answer is have a co-founder that was willing to seed, if you want that capital. So when we first came up with the idea, I obviously had to put a team together. I've never been a solo founder. I've already had co-founders before, so obviously the first thing you want to do, if you don't want to go on this road alone, which is going to be a very lonely road, is how to find the right co-founders and how each co-founder adds value, right, to the equation. Because you can't do it all. You're not good at everything. You need to find who's going to complement you. And usually we have a tendency to go for people that look like us, right? We're going to start something with a friend because you guys get along well, and But that's usually not the right route to take. Now, my co-founders, I had the chance to work with them in a previous venture that we had set up also to help Lebanon. So we had worked together for a year. And when I decided to start Purpl, it was an obvious choice for me to choose Jean-Marie and Wissam, who are my co-founders today. So to answer your question, Wissam came with the first seed investor, basically. So Wissam is very well connected. He's been in the market for a long time. So we knew that from the beginning, one of his main roles was going to be fundraising. I would assist on the fundraising, but he would be the one who would lead on that. So again, making sure you choose the right people and whoever can complement you, because you cannot be good at everything. So we got a seed funding with just an idea. We hadn't even started. We were just three guys who said, okay, this is the idea. We hadn't built the tech yet. We had put obviously some months, we had to put a pitch deck together and be able to pitch. And yeah, we got our first pre-seed, if you want, of $500,000 to get started.
Well, you were just mentioning that you could secure some initial funding, some seed funding. How did you manage to convince your co-founder or your, let's say, investor to get the first funding?
So the first people I had to convince were obviously my co-founders, but thankfully the idea shaped, we shaped it together, right? So I obviously was already someone who had launched 2 startups before, so I obviously took the lead on that front. For both of them, it was their first kind of entrepreneurial venture. So the first thing is, how do you convince someone to join you on this journey? Because it's not going to be an easy one. Most of the time, entrepreneurship, yes, the goal is eventually to, or most entrepreneurs want to build what we don't call anymore a unicorn, but you know, $1 billion company, that's the objective. Now, if you're building something for Lebanon, there's a very high chance you're never going to build $1 billion company. Let's face it. So today, obviously, the reason we were passionate about it is because we wanted to help. That was initially how, the why. So convincing them was just about, we have the same passion, are we passionate about the same thing? And second was, okay, who's, like, I remember we had this session, the 3 of us, an offsite where we spent 3 days together, literally just brainstorming 24/7. Also on the roles, who's going to have what kind of role, who's going to be what, who's going to be handling what, and then just figuring out where our strengths and weaknesses are. So once you manage to convince a co-founder to get on that road, you've done a big part of the job. Then second, you need to try to convince your first person to join that team. So my side here doesn't happen to be the first, but she's the second. To have joined that team as a marketing manager. So I do remember, super excited, we come to Beirut and we're like, okay, let's post for our first role. Who's going to be our first team member? We wanted someone that could do everything, kind of, you know? We didn't have an office, so we started doing interviews in different cafes. And we did get quite a few applications, which was surprising. I mean, I guess when you post on LinkedIn and people look at your profile, they might say, okay, might be interesting, but that's all we had for us, right? We didn't even have a company yet. We had just set up the company. So convincing your first employee is not easy. Now, we had some very interesting interviews. We could easily tell who would be a fit for us or not. Now we have a lot of people coming from the banking sector applying for the role. They would show up in a suit, and I'm like, okay, that's not going to be a fit. We have to explain them. Obviously, if you've worked in corporate for a long time, moving to the entrepreneurship and startup is not the same roles and responsibilities, and not everyone is fit for it. Now you can develop the skill, obviously the skill set, but it can be very, very challenging. So second was, how do we convince our first employee to join? Third is, we discussed about how do you convince investors, and I can talk about the next round we did, because by then we had some traction, but is how do you convince a partner to work with you? How do you build the strategic partnerships? We managed to integrate with two large players today on the sending side, Remedy and Payson. Remedy is a publicly traded company in the US. Why would they want to work with us? I mean, we had nothing, we were just starting, we just had this idea. It all comes down to passion and perseverance. Maybe a co-founder, maybe a team member, maybe a strategic partner, maybe an investor. When you start, they don't invest in your idea, they invest in you. If they believe you're passionate about what you're going to do, they obviously like the problem that you're trying to solve. That's all they need. Because one, you will most probably pivot over after 6 months and change your idea because your assumptions didn't match or you had a new opportunity. So it's really about you. They invest in you as a person. Obviously a track record counts, but doesn't mean that you cannot build something from day one if you don't have any experience in doing it. So it really comes down to your obsession, to your perseverance, and who you are as a person to convince anyone you're going to work with.
It's impressive to see how your passion and the passion of your team could drive the success and traction of Purpl. And I think it could help you just get on and just move on with all the obstacles and challenges. And operating a fintech company often involves dealing with complex legal and regulatory frameworks. How did you approach and navigate these challenges in Lebanon?
Given that this is live, I'll have to obviously, I have to be careful in the way I respond to that. So obviously, fintech is a very regulated industry. And most often than not, fintech is here to disrupt the existing regulatory framework and the existing way of modus operandi of the financial services sector in general. Now, I have to say that the fact that the banking sector was going through what it was going and it is still going, was also one of the main reasons we decided to launch Purpl. Because imagine if the banking sector was fully operational, there would have been no chance for us to compete. They could have done it themselves. They would have had the funding, they would have had the resources. So we took, when everyone was trying to flee the country or do something else, we said this is the right time now, while the banking sector is on its knees, to be able to try and innovate. Because eventually the banking sector is going to recover. Would it be the same as it was? We're not seeing any change till now, but the banking sector will recover. It will reinvent itself. So we thought we had a window of 2 to 3 years to try to make a difference, to build a brand, to build our services, to build our community, to bring value to our customers, so that the day the banking sector comes, will still be there. And potentially what could happen is there could be any acquisition targets, right? Because we built something that the banking sector wasn't able to do. Or we partner, and that's what we've done today so far. We partnered with one bank, Banque Lebanese, for the cash out. We're planning on partnering with others eventually, provided that they give us the service we need for our users. So now back to the regulatory framework. It wasn't easy at all. Now, it's never easy no matter where you work. The UAE, Europe, the US. Once you're labeled a fintech, the regulator usually doesn't like you to start with, right? Because you're going to be there to do things differently. You're going to have to do things that are not regulated yet. They're going to have to play catch up with you, because they're going to have to then come up with a regulation to regulate you one way or another. Now, the central bank had already issued that circular for digital wallets, so we went through that circular, understand what were the requirements, and we applied and submitted an application to the central bank. It took us 1.5 years to get our license. Does it mean you shouldn't operate or you shouldn't build in the meantime? No, that's exactly what we did. While we applied for our license, even though you cannot go live, you can already build your product. Now, the second thing is you cannot base yourself on the existing regulation, because that existing regulation is not actually adapted to what you're trying to do. So there's a very fine line on how you work with the regulator. So you don't go really against the regulator, you explain, you work in a partnership way. Now, they'll always be slower than you are. The same with our banking partner. But we decided in Lebanon, we shouldn't go and just launch to launch. Now, some startups go that route. I mean, Uber, that's how they started. They went against, there were no regulations, they just launched, and then they became so big that eventually they had to be, there had to be laws that came out to regulate them one way or another. The same for food delivery. So any industry, but in fintech it's even more intense. So we took the route of, we applied for our license, we tried to connect with the regulator, tell them why this regulation doesn't work. So for example, electronic KYC was only approved very recently, which meant in their digital first wallet circular, they were going to find that crazy, but for you to open a digital wallet, which is supposed to be digital, you would have to come to whichever branch in person, show your ID for you to have an account. But that defeats the purpose. If you're going to have to do that, it's not scalable at all. So we still went with our eKYC, and what we did is we explained to the regulator why eKYC is important, why it's actually secure. We're partnering with a leader of eKYC around the world, so we're putting the effort to use the best in class out there. And eventually it worked. Now eKYC is something that's approved. So it's a fine line. You have to be innovative. You need to test the water, see how much you can push it, but not going completely against or not showing any willingness to speak to the regulator or whatnot. So we hope that over time too, the limits on the wallets will be increased, because now the limits are very limited on how much you can hold in a wallet, how much you can transfer from wallet to wallet, how much you can spend in one transaction at the merchant. There's a lot of regulations and limitations that eventually over time we're going to have to change. And to do that, if you show that you get the mass and you've been adopted by the users and you become a means of payment, then it becomes harder for the regulator to say no, because at the end of the day, they also want this ecosystem to thrive and work.
It's very interesting to get to hear how Purpl, like a bit about Purpl. Now we'd like to get to meet you as an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, work-life balance can be challenging to maintain. How do you manage your time effectively and avoid burnout? Very much question.
If I let myself answer, if there's a work-life balance, you'll tell you there's no work-life balance. But so interestingly enough, I've never experienced burnout. I don't know if it's because of my lifestyle, or when I was in banking, I used to work very long hours, like 14, 15-hour days, but at least I had my weekends. So from early on, I've been used to this, work hard, kind of play hard. And I think banking was a very good school for me. Taught me a lot of stuff. But then I also had to adapt a lot when I became an entrepreneur. So work-life balance, again, if you're going to be obsessed by what you do, I don't believe in work-life balance. Because even if you're obsessed about, forget about work, let's say you're a professional athlete. If you're obsessed about what you do, athletes, all they do is train and train and train and train. And even athletes have it harder than an entrepreneur, because they also have to do a lot of sacrifices in terms of what they eat. They mostly don't drink, they don't smoke, for those who smoke. smoke or whatnot. So there's a lot of sacrifices that they need to do to be at their peak. And then at the end of the day, also an athlete, I mean, their peak is at 30, right? 32, 34 at most. After that, physically, your body is in decline no matter what. So I've always kind of followed this discipline. I've never had a chance to be a professional athlete, even though when I was younger I wanted to be a professional tennis player. I used to play rugby a lot also when I was younger, but I always had this discipline, which is sleep well, eat well, and then your brains will be able to, follow. Work-life balance, I've been an entrepreneur since 2014 when I left banking. My first startup lasted 5 years. We eventually decided to stop because my co-founder had enough of it. I didn't take a single vacation in 5 years. But I was loving what I was doing, so it didn't feel like work in some ways. It's like now when I tell you I don't feel the weekend is that the team is off on the weekend, which means I usually pick up the slack when I need to. I do customer success. I actually call users on the weekend who did a transaction or whatnot, and usually they're very surprised to hear the co-founder is calling like you don't have a team. Sometimes we kind of lose a bit of credibility. I have to explain that. No, it's good to be close to the customers and understand their problems firsthand. So as long as you love what you do, you won't count. I mean, if you love watching Netflix, you'll spend 24 hours a day watching Netflix, right? So it's kind of the same. But you need to have a healthy lifestyle with it. So sleep is important. Eating well is important. Those are basic things that you can do, and I think there's this adrenaline that keeps you going. I actually remember at the end of my first startup, it was kind of a devastating time. For 1 month, I couldn't move after that because the adrenaline was on. There was nothing to keep me going, and suddenly I had this. I got sick. I hadn't gotten sick in 5 years, and it was very hard to reboot my body at the time. So, again, the real answer: there's no work-life balance when you're an entrepreneur. As simple as that. Because you'll feel a lot of pressure. You're going to have a duty vis-a-vis your team. I mean, at the end of the day, you're paying people, right? You're responsible for their livelihood. You need to be able to pay them their check at the end of the month because people don't work for free. Now, there's more than just the money. And hopefully when you hire people, you shouldn't hire them just for the paycheck. That's the wrong hire you're going to do. Then you have a duty vis-a-vis your investors. They gave you money. You have a duty vis-a-vis your users, right? Providing them the best service. So there's a lot of pressure, and all of that pressure is on you. There's no one else, right? If you have a boss, at least it's on your boss, right? So hopefully Maisa doesn't feel the same pressure with you, but we're here to take that pressure on. So you cannot do something halfway. People who do businesses on the side or do multiple things at the same time, I am yet to see anyone succeed, really succeed in one of those things. You can build small businesses and put your hands everywhere, but if you really want to build a company from scratch, build a culture, build a team, and scale that company, if you do it, you have to do it 100%.
I can see, and I do believe so. Were there any moments when you felt like giving up? And if so, how did you push through these moments?
I mean, at Purpl, yeah, it happened a few times when we were not getting our license. You always feel like everything's going against you. I cannot count the number of times. Now, funny enough, the more you fail, the more you get used to failing, and the more you understand that it's the road to success. No one succeeds in the first time. And if you do, it means you're very lucky. It's not about being smart. You can be as smart as you want. There's too many factors involved. So actually, the more you doubt, the more it permits you to reboot yourself and actually think outside of the box. So you know when they say you always need to challenge yourself to be better at something or overcome a fear. So the more roadblocks you hit, the more you increase your circle of confidence in some ways. So I've managed to go through that roadblock, I've overcome it, so you suddenly feel even more powerful, and then you go for the next. So the first moment is, yeah, it's fear, or why would I want to go through that again? Is it really worth it? And then if you push yourself through, as long as you surmount it, you'll know that you'll get this boost of confidence to go out and try to challenge the next one. So yeah, we were supposed to get our license after 6 to 9 months at most. We're a year and a half. We haven't generated any revenue. We have to pay salaries. We haven't been able to test our product with users to know will they really use it or not. So yeah, I can tell you that once the 9 months limit passed, we're never going to get the license. Even if we deserve it. It's no longer about deserve it, it's about who you know. And with everything happening at the central bank, governor, no governor. So yeah, it's happened, and I think doubt even creeped in the team. Why are we working so hard and we might not even see the light? And as a co-founder, you need to always have a straight face, and you shouldn't let those feelings appear too much, right? Because you always need to motivate your team. You always need to give them that confidence that there's nothing to worry about. We're going to make it. So yes, and doubt is not a bad thing. I've doubted myself many times, and I still doubt myself. Every time we take a decision, did we take the right decision or not? Is it the right approach we're taking? Should we integrate with this partner or with this other partner? Should we launch this service or the other service? There's no right or wrong answer. You have to launch and then see if it works. If not, you pivot immediately.
Very interesting, and I can only imagine how it was after the 9 months. And now looking ahead, what is your vision for the future of Purpl? How do you plan to continue making a difference despite ongoing challenges?
First, easy answer. Whenever I come in a room and ask, have you read about Purpl, everyone would raise their hand so that we would know that we made it by then. So adoption is here. People are using us. I would say, again, the mission we started is still the same. One is to democratize money transfers, make it cheaper, more affordable, better experience. And second is enabling financial inclusion. And that still remains our mission and will always be our mission. We obviously have bigger aspirations than just Lebanon. Lebanon is obviously the market we decided to start because we're Lebanese and there was obviously a big problem to solve, and we're solving that problem. And it's still a long road ahead to go against the big players like OMT. Just to give you an idea, if I were to ask you how many people search for money transfer online today on Google, it's very low. However, the search for OMT is 100,000 searches a month versus money transfer a few thousand. That's how big that brand is associated to money transfer. We don't say money transfer, it's OMT. So obviously that's one challenge we need to be able to, is that eventually we want Purpl to become also a brand name in the field. We like to be the underdog, so we play a lot on that. We're new, we're young, we're not part of the traditional ecosystem. We're actually a response to that ecosystem that collapsed. So eventually Lebanon, hopefully, to become the digital wallet of choice for the Lebanese population or anyone living in Lebanon. As a user, you can have multiple wallets. So we're not going for the monopoly route. We want other digital wallets out there because we need multiple wallets to build this ecosystem. And you as a user, you might like one wallet for a feature and another for another feature. So the ability for you to be able to use different wallets is important. So that's for Lebanon. We're looking at Egypt at the moment. Egypt is going through a bit what Lebanon is or has gone through with a strong devaluation of their currency. They rely on a lot of remittances. So Egypt is the 5th biggest market worldwide. They receive $32 billion a year in remittances. Lebanon is at 7. So again, trying to really, the mission is to enable financial inclusion in the region, especially in economies where banking hasn't reached everyone. There's 100 million people that are unbanked in the region, so that's a big market. And it's very easy for us to replicate the same model we did in Lebanon and export it to Egypt, to Iraq, eventually Syria, Jordan, and others. And today what we're really proud of is that we decided to innovate from day one. We didn't want to copy the competition and just do what they're doing. And that's why we didn't go for the traditional route of going to a cash-out agent. That's why we decided to say, let's go above and beyond. And again, make banking infrastructure available to beyond banks. So we're the first ones to do that, and I'm pretty sure we're not going to be the last ones. Many people will go down that route eventually, but we were the first ones to do so.
Now, reflecting on your past experiences with these startups that you co-founded, if you could give one piece of advice to aspiring entrepreneurs in Lebanon, what would it be?
I mean, don't take it from me. Now, maybe I can ask also, sorry, I'm asking you questions too, because I feel like I'm under the spotlight. How many of you are going the entrepreneurial route after graduation? Okay, that's just a few hands. Who's going down? I don't know. Who's going into the banking sector? Okay. Consulting? Engineer? Okay. So banking, if you had that as question in my year, 2004, when I was graduating, I think everyone would have raised their hand. Consulting, so it would have been banking consulting and a few engineers, doctors, lawyers, etc. So it's good to see a few hands raising up for entrepreneurship. There's many advice I could give. The one that actually drives me every day is what I said, is that to be a successful entrepreneur, you need to accept the fact that you're going to fail. You need to be comfortable with failure, which not many people are. We all fear failure, and it's normal. It's like we all fear skydiving, right? Jumping out of a plane is crazy. But you have to overcome that fear. And I think if you're comfortable with failure, you'll succeed as an entrepreneur. Because, as I said, again, your confidence will grow every time you manage to overcome an obstacle. And if you don't overcome that obstacle, you failed, you learn to go around it, or you'll find another way. So, my first startup, I failed. 5 years of my life. We raised money, we were doing extremely well, we couldn't scale, and eventually we couldn't raise from investors because they thought, my first startup was a food tech startup, nothing to do with what I'm doing now, but I've always loved food and passionate about it. So it was a marketplace for chefs, for people to put private chefs at home, online. 5 years, I mean, it wasn't easy, but I already got, if you want the experience you get, it's a once in a lifetime. I think I've never learned so much than I did in my 10 years in banking or private equity. When you work in a corporate, you're comfortable, you don't challenge yourself. You have a job description, you become very good at what you do, but that's all you do, right? When you're in corporate, you might be in the sales department or in the marketing department or the IT department. Most of the time, you don't care what happens in the other departments. Most of the time, you even look down on other departments for whatever reasons, right? When you're an entrepreneur, you have to do it all. The things you like and the things you don't like. So I think the main advice I can give, or what I've learned, is I've failed, I've embraced those failures, and I've learned from those failures. So now it becomes easier for you to start something. What took us now, I don't know, let's say it took us 6 to 9 months to really get Purpl up and running, and we could have launched earlier if we had the license, would have taken me 2 years if it was my first time. So it gets easier. So one, don't fear failure. Second, again, we talked about it, it's the obsession of your idea. But third, not being afraid to change or pivot if you need to. Because if you're too obsessed and you're too narrow, you need to listen to your users' feedback. And even if your idea, you really believe in it, it's not getting adopted, it's not going anywhere, right? So the ability to pivot is important. When we first started Purpl, we didn't have the aggregator model in mind, but we wanted to start directly with crypto. We wanted directly to say, actually, let's forget about the traditional sending euros or dollars or sterling. Let's go crypto, stable coins, right? It would have been too innovative. And it would have taken us too long to get it up and running. So we're like, let's build the basics first, and then we'll see if we add those services over time.
And now many people in Lebanon might be hesitant to start a business due to the economic situation. What would you tell them? What advice would you give them to overcome this fear and to leap into the entrepreneurial journey?
I actually think it's the right time. If an economy does well, if a country does well, there's no problem to solve, right? Or the problems they're trying to solve are not really problems. I mean, with no disrespect to the likes of doctors, Deliveroo of this world, the only problem they're solving is convenience, right? Now it has mass adoption. And with COVID, I mean, without those platforms, we would have been stuck at home wondering how to get our groceries. But when an economy does well, you don't really solve problems. You try, I mean, getting groceries in 10 minutes or 30 minutes doesn't make a huge difference. It's just more and more convenience, right? But you look at those new platforms that actually did well and were fundraising tons of money, and now suddenly they're shutting their doors. That their main messaging was like, get your groceries delivered in 10 minutes. What's wrong with 30 minutes? What's wrong with 1 hour? Why are we so much in a rush, right? So it's not really a real problem. It's just trying to improve what already exists. So actually, when an economy is in shambles, when a country is in shambles, obviously provided that you have the support and the infrastructure, there's a lot of problems you can solve, right? And that's why we decided to launch in Lebanon. We wouldn't have launched a wallet in the UAE where, for one, there's already wallets out there. Second, competition is much higher, etc. So it's really understanding what's the problem you're solving today, and we have so many problems we need to solve on a daily basis. Now the only concern is, yes, how do you raise money? How do you get people to believe in what you're doing? And again, when we raise our seed round, we approach over 50 international investors. And their main answer, and most obvious answer, was like country risk. You're asking us to invest in a startup that's solving a problem in a country that there's no visibility on. It's too much risk for them. Their risk appetite isn't that big, right? Second was like, do you have your license? No, we don't. Okay, well, that's another risk factor. What if you don't get your license? So it's all about how do you de-risk that investment for your investor? How do you de-risk that value proposition to your partner? How do you de-risk that job offer to an employee? So there's the flip side of the coin, right? So I believe going and solving problems in a situation like there is in Lebanon today is important. If it's not us, who? We cannot count on the government to do that, right? Things are not moving. Let's take the case of renewable energy. I mean, it's not just about starting a company that's going to import solar panels from China. I think there's so much more that can be done on top of that. And using technology. Okay, how do you make those panels smart, for example? Technology is easy to build. Now, everything that's manufacturing, maybe Lebanon is not the best place to do it because the cost of manufacturing is high. But it's not just about solving an immediate problem, and it's going further than that. And I think there's a lot of opportunities. The agricultural sector, there's so much that can be done in that sector. Which other country in the region can pride itself for its agricultural sector? We have everything. We have water, we have the best fruits in the world, the best vegetables in the world. How do we manage to export it? How can we improve so that the output gets bigger? And all of that is done using technology.
I would like to stress on what you were saying. By this saying, actually, every problem is a business solution. So yeah, now the chaos in Lebanon are perfect for you to open your startup. Now we've gathered some questions that the audience have posted while registering. Will there be a debit card powered by Purpl in the future?
That's a good question. There will be. Now, the problem when you say card, you already talk about something that most people cannot get because either they don't have the credit rating or they've never been banked. So today, the trend we're seeing abroad and more is that the card rails are becoming more and more obsolete. Payments, peer-to-peer is the new thing, account-to-account transfer is the new thing. So if you can get around cards, why issue cards? One card is a cost. Cards is plastic. It costs money. And then you have to ship it. So you're seeing more and more of a new way of settlement, which is account-to-account. And that's exactly what we're doing, because today you can pay at a merchant without a card. It's QR code technology, which again picked up a lot because of COVID. It was very weird for us to scan a QR code only 3 years ago, and now that's all we do. Scan, 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 right? So you don't really need a card. Payment online, more and more you're going to have payment platforms where you can pay without a card. MasterCard is now issuing a way to pay via QR code. You would have told MasterCard will never do that because it cannibalizes their card business. But they are launching a QR code payment facility for merchants. So we'll see what the next year or two brings. But we think we can get around the card to start with. And if not, it would be a virtual card.
Yes, exactly. How did you gain trust from your customers?
I think by being close to them. Today we have over 20,000 users on our app signed up. We ranked #1 on the stores for finance app in Lebanon, so we managed to already outrank bigger competition. I think it's we get praised a lot for our customer service, customer success. We literally call every user who transacts on the platform, literally. We ask them how they found the experience. We ask them how they heard about us. We ask them what kind of services they would like to see. And then we ask them for a review on the store. Also the fact that we're the underdog and we're not part of the traditional ecosystem. It kind of, people want to support us because they're like, okay, these guys are trying to do something. I think that's how we gain the trust of our users. I mean, you were invited, and Jad, we invited early adopters to our office to meet the team. We do user surveys. We ask them what feature would you like to see, how do you envisage it. So we run those focus group sessions. Now, obviously, it's not scalable, right? I mean, we can get, 20 people in the office, 30 people in the office, but they become your brand ambassadors. They're the ones who will get you your next 20 customers. If each person can refer 20 people, you're good to go, because there's this exponential effect. So I think it's mostly that, the fact that we're close to them, we care about every transaction, we're not a commoditized business yet. But the problem is, will we be able to keep that level of service once we scale much bigger? Then that becomes a challenge, but we'll figure it out.
Yes, and I believe also like discussing with them the features, etc., makes them feel heard and makes them want to use the product or service even more. If you were to start your company back up from scratch again, what would you change?
Purpl or any company?
As you wish.
I think it's too soon to know if I would change something at Purpl. I think we've made a lot of good decisions. I think I'll take the easy route, saying I don't think I would change anything for Purpl. For my first startup, I think I would have failed faster. It's better to die quickly than die a slow death, I can tell you that. Well, not in the literal sense, in the figurative sense, obviously. I think we were too in love with our original idea, and we didn't see the signs of the market. So it was we built a business. We could have continued having built a small business, but that wasn't the goal. So what I would have changed is, pivoting sooner, and not being too obsessed with your original idea. Try to adapt.
Amazing. I'll finish with one last question. What did you learn? What was your biggest lesson during your Purpl journey so far?
Biggest lesson. This one is a tough one. I guess it's a lesson I learned from before too. Is one, surrounding yourself with the right people. But the biggest thing for me, or the biggest challenge, is as a founder, it's your baby, right? And letting in people in the team, you have to really trust them and all of that. So. The biggest lesson is mostly around getting the right people on board. But eventually, as the team grows, your responsibilities start or should diminish. And that's a very, very tough thing, right? It's not that you would become obsolete in some ways, it's that, and especially for someone like me who likes to build from scratch, and that's what I enjoy the most actually, is putting everything together. Is that over time you hire people, you don't hire people just to be there, you hire people to take over things from you, and people who can do better than you. So to give you an example, I had the marketing at Purpl. I work very closely with Maisa, obviously. We've been looking for a head of marketing for 8 months. Which means I got to a stage where I realized, okay, I've done what I could, or these were my capabilities in marketing. I need to hire someone who can take us to the next level, right? Because there's so much I know. I cannot be good at everything, and eventually you need to be able to focus. Is that eventually you grow into a bigger company, the roles are more defined, and you each are responsible for something. So the biggest lesson I learned is we got to a stage now where we're 19 people in the team across different, obviously mostly in Beirut, a couple in the UAE, and our tech team is in the Philippines. Is that you need to learn to let go of some responsibilities, but you need to make sure you hire the right person for it, because any hire in a startup, a bad hire, is very costly for your startup. You have to train them, and then if they're not the right fit, it's a lot of time lost because everyone contributes. Everything we do, unlike when you work in a big company, you don't really see the effects of your work, right? It gets diluted with everything that's happening. Here, every campaign we come up with, every new service we launch, every line of code makes a difference in the service. And that's the hardest part. I, for example, know that today I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO. But maybe a year from now, I don't have that experience to scale. I have the experience of building from scratch, right? A lot of startups eventually, when they raise funds, they also try to get experienced CEO on board, or that has had this experience, so they can take you from this level to the next. So as a co-founder, you also need to learn you will not always be in the role you're in, because eventually you might not be the right person for the company. And many startups fail because of that. WeWork is a perfect example. I don't know if anyone has seen the series We Crash, but the reason WeWork failed is because of their founder. Uber, exactly the same. So there's a certain point where you're no longer the right person either to lead, or you're no longer the right person because you don't have anymore the knowledge or the right, if you want, skill set. Leading a company of 20 people is very different from leading a company of 200 people, where all it becomes is management, team management, and whatnot.
Yes, of course. The founders are everything behind the business. Now I guess we're going to move for the Q&A. I'm going to leave 5 to 10 minutes if anyone has any question to ask.
Michael, here or Michael, Jean here. I'm a managing partner at Lebanon Networking Hub. I wanted to ask you, why don't you want to build a monopoly? Because you said that you want to allow more space for other digital wallets on our phones, and someone might use Purpl for a feature and another wallet for another feature. But I think 90% of companies that succeed end up having a monopoly, even if they don't show it, like Google, Kleenex, or any other big company. So why not try and aim to build a monopoly?
So what I'm trying, if that monopoly happens, it should be user-driven. So if we come to a point where everyone wants to use Purpl, we will become a monopoly eventually. So that's what it's a good point, is we're not coming at it in the mind that we want to own the market, and the user needs to have the option at first. The user will rule it for you, right? Today, if you have 4 wallets on your phone, eventually a few of them will become dormant because you don't like the experience or whatnot. Our objective is for you to love Purpl and to only use Purpl. Now, the reason why I say it's important to be able to also diversify for you as a user, because we're a fintech, it's not like an Uber, right? You order a taxi, a car, and it takes you. You're putting your money. It's as if I'm telling you today, we know that diversification is important. You don't put all your money in the same place, because if there's a systemic risk, you lost all your money. So it's a bit of that same logic. And anyways, today wallets, we have a limitation on how much you can keep in that wallet, which the maximum is $3,000. Now you could say the limit is because central bank wants to be conservative, but we all know it's mostly because they don't want big accounts to be in wallets and not in bank accounts, right? So there's a lot of that today I use different wallets, but I know there's one wallet I use the most, but I park my money somewhere else so that I cannot diversify. But if we get to a monopoly because our users or the user base decided we are the app of choice, that would obviously make us very happy, but we also work in a collaboration system. We're pushing for wallets to be interoperable. You can transfer from Purpl to another wallet, from another wallet to Purpl, eventually from Purpl to a bank account to Purpl. We want to open that to build that ecosystem.
Thank
Hello, Karl. My name is Shabaz Aider. I would like to know, as a law student, what qualities do you look for in your legal advisor?
So we have a lawyer. We're very happy about him. He happens to be a friend of mine. I actually, funny enough, was amongst his first startup clients in 2014. So you mean what a startup should look for as legal?
What qualities in general do you look for in this person?
Well, I wouldn't link it just to lawyers. I would link it to anyone we work with, maybe our lawyer, our accountant, our auditor. One is rigidity. It doesn't work. Rigid, you know. Because again, a lot of time we innovate. So if your lawyer or your accountant or your auditor are very rigid and old school, it makes your life very hard. And they will not enjoy working with you and you will not enjoy working with them. So one is adaptability, right? You need to be able to adapt to our business model. You need to be able to adapt to the new reality or something. Second, what we look for is, obviously in our case, efficiency. It's important for us to, if we need a contract drafted for new partnerships and all of that, it needs to be something that, you know, happens. Now we work with a digital law platform called Clara in the UAE. It's a platform that a lot of startups use because all the standardized agreements are in there. You can easily draft any kind of agreement without having to need a lawyer. You just fill in the information and it drafts. Now, obviously, with the use of AI, there's a lot of things you can do also. But what I look most in a lawyer is also the business sense. It shouldn't be just about law, it should also be about business, because if not, your contracts become unreadable, not business friendly, not commercial at all, and that doesn't help. But I think one great quality about lawyers is the attention to detail, which is very, very important in our line of business. It can make or break you, basically. But I mean, if in plain terms, I would go with for a young lawyer than an older lawyer that might know very well, you know, labor law or stuff like that, but wouldn't be able to advise us on, you know, new technologies, etc., etc. Right? So yeah, I don't know if that answers.
That's fine.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Hi, Karl, كيفك؟ Antoine Musa. I'm an ecopreneur and here as a mentor with Asher Center. My question is the following. I had the chance to be involved in several startups in Lebanon, most notably Compost Melody, which is a company I founded in 2016-17, and I'm currently an advisor in it. And I had the chance also to be a founding member in a tech-enhanced recycling company in Colombia for the last 3 years. And that opened my eye on coming from Lebanon, and all our problems are utility problems and basic problems, and tech wasn't always the first thing to think of. It opened really my eye on how big and important it is to work on tech components or even just tech startups. My question to you, and this is something since I've been here for 3-4 weeks, I'm hoping to stay much more in Lebanon and keep working to help the ecosystem. My biggest question for you now, and this is the reason actually why I was really attracted to be in this session. I know there's a lot of things lacking, but what are the top maybe 2-3 factors that are lacking in Lebanon for the startups in Lebanon to be more involved in tech and blitz scaling type of startups?
I mean,
like yours, I would imagine.
There's a lot of things that, and if you build a startup in Lebanon and you succeed, it means you can succeed anywhere in the world. That's a fact, actually. And we think we have it hard in Lebanon. A few weeks ago, so we were selected in this program called Village Capital, Financial Solutions for Migrants. They selected top 5 startups on every continent. We were lucky to be amongst the MENA region cohort. We all met in Istanbul for the final week of the program. And I got the chance to meet startups from Africa, from Asia. If we think we have it tough in Lebanon, imagine how tough it is in Myanmar now, or how tough it can be in Nepal, or how tough it can be in some remote parts of Africa. And you see people trying to innovate. Honestly, it was a very humbling experience. I was like, oh my God, the things they have to go through compared to us is another level. Startup in Afghanistan, e-commerce startup in Afghanistan. I mean, some crazy stuff. So, one, we don't have it too bad, I would say in Lebanon. Now, the main thing that are missing is a lot of things that are outside of our control, unfortunately, but there's also a positive side to the equation. One, the country, macroeconomic, political environment doesn't help, right? When you say Lebanon, many investors run away, if not all investors run away. Now, the positive thing about that is you have investors that their main focus is to invest in countries like Lebanon or countries in, challenging geographies. And that's part of their mandate. And most of these are usually investors that are backed by DFIs, where they don't measure return based on how much money they're going to make. They measure return based on how you change the lives of people, or what are you trying to change. So again, for an ecopreneur, there's a lot of funding solutions now. So that's one challenge we have, is that the geopolitical environment of Lebanon doesn't help. And with that, I'll include just creating a company in Lebanon. Also, it's very hard to raise money in the Lebanese company today if you want to raise foreign investors' money. So we as Purpl, we have an operating in Lebanon, but our holding is in the UAE. Under English law, it's more comfortable for investors to invest in it. You kind of de-risk it. So also the setup, how to create a company, the legal part of it, etc., doesn't help. So the geopolitical situation of the country, the setting up a company in Lebanon also doesn't help. And the main challenge is also education of your potential customer, or of the market you're trying to target. If you're too innovative, people will not understand it. So innovation, if you're the first one to do it, it's always the hardest, because you have to educate the market. Today, again, we recently did a research with Maisa on understanding, now that we're launching the digital wallet feature, how are we going to rank for the keyword digital wallet on Google, because people search for it. The average monthly searches of digital wallets in Google search Lebanon is 1 to 10. Because no one knows what a digital wallet is. I'm assuming it was the same for renewable energy, solar panels. Now, if you search on it, I guess the volume have skyrocketed, right, in the last 3 years. So that's also a challenge, is that in countries like Lebanon, where I would say innovation is not a priority, because we have so many concerns and people have, all they try to do is to get by day, it's also hindering any creative or innovative ideas, right, out there. So, and that's the main challenge, not just for Lebanon, but other countries that, face the same day today. We don't have the luxury, as people live in a country like Lebanon, to think about other things than just, okay, how do I get by from one day to another? I mean, some of us can do more than others. And that also makes innovation harder. When I go spend time in the Dubai office, and I'm in WeWork, and I'm surrounded by other startups. I'm surrounded by other extremely and smarter founders. It gives you that boost of energy, right? Today we work in our office in Manpire. We have a nice office, but that's it. You don't get the chance to interact, and that's why the importance of Asher here, the importance of co-working space like BBD, because you need to bring all those people together in the same room to stimulate each other, because if not, it's very lonely, it's very hard. And I think that's the main challenge we face today, is that you might want to be innovative, you might come up with a great idea, but today if you go to a farmer and you tell him, okay, I can improve your output by 30% by using this device, it's going to be very hard to convince him. He's still going to do it the old way, because that's how he's comfortable doing it, that's how he, and that makes it hard. And today we have the same problem. How are people going to cash out? People still today, they're like, how do I cash out from an ATM without a card? When you think about it, that's the first reflex, you use a card. There's a card. And the older generation find it very weird, and that's why we have to educate them. And I think that's the biggest challenge in Lebanon, is how do you convince people that your idea, despite you telling them all the benefits of it and being able to quantify the benefits, it's this traditional, no, there's so much risk around me, I don't want to take the risk to change the one thing I know how to do. No matter if you can increase my efficiency by 30-50%, today I know I'm going to get 100 cucumbers out of this harvest, whatever it is. I don't want to take the risk to change, even if you're going to give me 150. And I think that's the biggest challenge we have today, is the mentality of people, is that we no longer are in a position where we want to, our brain is like, okay, I need to look at the next best thing, I need to improve, I just need to sustain myself. Whatever I'm doing now, I'm happy with it, because I know that's what I'm going to get. There's already too many other factors that are, I have to concern myself about.
We're going to take one last question.
Hello, I'm Anthony. Thank you for this session. I wanted to ask you what were the metrics and the assumption you used to develop your product while not being able to launch an early product.
So what metrics we were tracking, or we were expecting we would be tracking?
Yes, what did you track or rely on to develop, to take the 2 years to develop a product without having the certainty of having this?
Okay, so what we did, we built a waiting list already. So we obviously we all have people we know, right? So we tried, the goal was each one of us in the team to reach out to 100 people. I think we put a list of 100 people each we know, told them about Purpl, told them to register. We had a beta app, but they couldn't do anything on it. But we already put some feature, let's say cash out. It would show how it works, but they couldn't actually transact. So that's the one thing we did. So when you build a waiting list, and then like when you want to go to a club, if you don't see a queue outside the club, you don't want to go in, right? So you make people wait at the door even though it's empty inside, you get people coming in. So it's the same idea with the waiting list. If people see a waiting list, it's human psychology, they'll just register on it and then hope to get invited in some way. So then we invited some people that were on our waiting list. And we also invited them to the private beta of the app. What we also did in the meantime is building our online presence, creating content, so that when people search online, we already start ranking for the keywords we want to rank for on Google search. So we wrote, I've been a big proponent of SEO, writing blog posts, so that even if you're not live yet, you're already building your authority on the web. What is called domain authority, because our website was young and other people's websites are 20 years old, for example. So there's a lot of things you can do before you launch, but it's always better to launch sooner rather than later and with a product that's not perfect, because your early adopters will understand that this product is not perfect. However, if they see your product evolve based on their feedback, They will evaluate more than a product that works perfectly and they weren't anymore. But that's always the hardest part. You never want to come up with a product that doesn't work perfectly. And every time we release a new build of our app, we freak out that there's going to be a bug. And we overtest and overtest and overtest before we launch. And it's easier said than done because we don't follow that. We really want everything to be perfect. But at the beginning, come out with anything. It could even be just a design you do on Figma, a prototype for people to play with. You can record their interactions, understand what works and what doesn't. There's a lot of things you can do before you go live. There's one last, I think.
We still have 3 questions, so we're going to go very fast.
Okay.
Hello, sir. My name is Peace, and thank you for gracing us with your presence today. I really enjoyed every part of it, and I felt really inspired. However, I have a couple of questions. The first one is bothering around delegation, because I think most of everything you talked about, the 2 points you hit on, is mainly delegation and adaptability. Basically, I feel that when you mention that you don't believe in work-life balance, I think it's pushing the narrative that the CEO is supposed to know everything. I know that I may not be able to remember certain CEOs right now that went into the business not being an expert in the field. But I know that as a CEO, to an extent, you need to have basic knowledge of what you're going into at least, and maybe a higher expert. So for me, I believe it's about having the right people around you, having that drive, and knowing what to tell, who to do. That's what I think. So my first question would be, don't you think that delegation is what most people struggle with? And then the second one is, I didn't raise my hand when you mentioned who wants to go down the entrepreneurial road. It doesn't mean I'm going to, but maybe mine is mainly non-profit oriented. But I definitely do want to work in corporate. And someone told me something recently. She said, other people may be doing things, but it makes a difference if you're doing the same thing, because it's you doing it. So I'm saying that most CEOs or aspiring entrepreneurs usually make this mistake by having this belief that they're usually just the key players. They don't know how to, they don't want to carry other people along, acknowledge their employees, know that these people also matter. So I'm saying lots of us probably do not want to, just go down the entrepreneurial road. Maybe we want to be in corporate, but at the same time, be recognized for what we do, be an expert at what we do, which is also what I'm looking at. So I'm actually saying that, don't you think that also matters? That it's not just entirely about being a CEO. You can also be a key player in the field, working in corporate.
Okay, I'll start with the first one. And you're totally right. So delegation and accountability that you mentioned. Now, as I said, it's always easier said than done. As a founder, you're in love with what you do and you feel responsible for every decision that are going to be made. And it takes a bit of adaptability eventually, also to find the right balance. It's never easy to find the right balance. So eventually, obviously, the more you grow, the bigger your team is, the more experts you have, then eventually you can talk about, taking a bit of a step back, getting to. So my point was at the beginning, when you're on your own or with your co-founders, and that beginning is not 1 month or 2 months. That beginning is a couple of years. Work-life balance, it's not just about doing tasks. It's that no matter what you do, even if you're switched off, there's a lot of things you think about for the business, maybe strategy, where are you going to be a year. So it's not just about work, it's about vision. A lot of my ideas come on the weekend, for example, where I have the time to not deal with the day-to-day, where you're very reactive during the week, and you can become more proactive over the weekend or in the evening, for example. So, again, being able to build the delegation is important, but it's also, most of the time, you need to find the right people, and finding the right people takes time. So I totally agree with that I would love eventually, at least for me it's been 2 years now, and we're seeing that as we hired a technical CTO, for example. None of us were very technical. We hired a CTO that helped us to take over that part that we weren't experts in. We hired a product designer, a specialist in UI UX, because at first we were the ones drawing the app experience. So you can find some specialized role that will take over, but eventually your role becomes more about, it transforms into, then you have to, once you hire more people, you have to manage those people. And that's another concern that you have on the plate or more to. Now, may you be a CEO or whatever the role is at the C level, eventually management becomes very important, making sure the team, managing your team, the opportunities for growth, etc., etc. And then at the same time, it's the ability to be able to take a step back, is that this thing became bigger than you, right? Your idea became bigger than you, and you need to take it to the next level. And you might not be the right person to take it to the next level. You need to be able to acknowledge that. And to the second question about entrepreneurship, of course, I mean, I started my career in corporate. I didn't have it in me to be an entrepreneur. I didn't have the idea that came up or whatnot. And I think corporate was a very good school for me, right? Because I learned the value of, working in teams. I became an expert in one field, etc. So there's no right or wrong path. Some entrepreneurs succeed without having any corporate experience. Others need a corporate experience to be able to succeed. So it's not black or white. And there are a lot of people we call intrapreneurs, that are entrepreneurs within companies, right? That try to go above their job description, try to do something more than just what they've been hired to do. And those people eventually they become frustrated, and that's when they become entrepreneurs, because moving things in a company is very, very hard, right? Decision making takes a lot of time. Again, so these are the people who usually then succeed at becoming entrepreneurs, because they've worked in a corporate, they've learned about culture, they've learned about different areas, they specialize in one field, and then they move on because they're more creative or they want to build something. So you say you want to be an entrepreneur, not for profit. That's exactly what a lot of companies were at the program were about, is that it's not just about profit, because profit is measured depending on who you raise money from. If you raise money from a VC, a venture capital, his metric at the end of the day for you is going to be how much revenue are you going to generate. If you raise money from, let's say, a DFI that's all about women empowerment, your KPI is not going to be how much money are you generating. Your KPI is how many women did you manage to touch and are using your service for whatever reason, right? So you just need to find who are the right person for backing you up, making sure you get the right people, and then your metrics are emerging. Today we raise money from VCs. So my KPI as a co-founder and CEO is volumes of transactions, is active users. But at the same time, we still have this financial inclusion component that permits us to also raise from the likes of USAID. We raised money from USAID. We got a grant from USAID because they wanted to see how our solution can help refugees get access to basic financial services. That's their KPI we have to work on. So again, no right or wrong answer, corporate or not. I think each brings its own value. But what I'm saying is that if you have this entrepreneurial bug while you're in corporate, which I had, it's just go and for your idea, right? And go on your own, don't fear that. Yes.
Hi Karl, I'm Mark and I have a software startup. And you mentioned how important it is to hire the right people in your startup. So my question is, one, what are the main factors you should consider? And two, what to do if you're very young, you're not experienced, so how do you figure out how to hire if you don't have much experience and you're very young?
So you mean hiring for a startup, right?
Yes.
Because I'm not an HR person and I don't claim to be. Again, the first people you want to hire are the people that will join you, the one need to be also convinced in your vision. So when you try to hire someone, you need to make sure they align with your vision, right? Of what you're trying to build or the problem you're trying to solve. So that's one thing. Second is they're not here just for the paycheck in some ways, right? So again, maybe it's too simple to say that if the first question that someone I interview asks me at the end is like, what's the, how much do I get paid? What are the working hours? That's not the right questions, or it gives you a sign, okay, that's not, and I usually tell them, we're not for you because one, we cannot maybe pay you as high as a big corporate would, even though from the day we started, because, and this was in 2021, we never paid people, and we received investment in dollars, we were paying our team in dollars. I think we were among the first early 2021, September 2021, to pay people in dollars, because why would we pay them in other currency than we receive investment from? But I guess there's no, it's honestly, it's a feeling. Don't forget, the first people you're going to hire, you're going to be spending a lot of time with them, right? And you're going to deal directly with them. It's not as if you have multiple layers of people that report. So you need to have this affinity. And you don't necessarily hire for the skill set, unless obviously you're hiring a developer. You hire for the drive. A skill can be taught, right? Especially if you're the one who's going to teach that person. If anything, when you mentor, and I spend a lot of time doing that, you don't hire for the skill set, unless it's a specialized skill set, which you need a coder, a back-end developer, you hire for the skill set. But any other person you hire for business, for sales, for operations, etc., they need to be marathon runners, not sprinters. They should be people that are, there's a lot of patience involved, there's a lot, again, being able to operate in an environment where there's no structure. I don't have a job description that tells me every day what I have to do. You have to figure out what you have to do on a daily basis. So there's no, again, I think we were lucky with the team we have. We have obviously had a bit of turnover. Again, we have people that have been with us since the beginning, and we've seen how the company has evolved. But mostly hire for passion, and people you're going to be happy to see on day in, day out in that same office, or maybe not even an office, in a cramped space where you're going to be sharing the same desk. So you need to be comfortable with that. But most importantly is sharing the same vision as you. It's not a perfect answer. If I had a perfect answer, we would have all the best people in the team. Yes?
Hi, Karl. My name is Anthony Zaidi, and I'm 16. I just have two questions. The first one is, what do you think should I do to be a successful entrepreneur? Do you think I should generalize or specialize? Do you think I should only focus on one business and grow it to the max, or focus on multiple ones and try everything? This is my first question. The second question is from my brother. So he's an entrepreneur, and he's surrounded by people who don't share the same vision. Okay, and he doesn't want to lose them in the process. He doesn't want to lose the people, and he wants to be successful. So what do you think he should do? Thank you so much.
You look older than 16. I wouldn't be able to give you just advice without knowing, who you are, what you want to do, what are your aspirations. I mean, again, to answer back to the point of peace, I started as a banker because that's what I wanted to do in 2014 or 2004. And most people don't know what they want to do when they first start, right? A lot of engineers study engineer, but they don't practice engineer, they become consultants. So I think specialization is, each one has a pro and con, being a specialist or a generalist. I always was a generalist. When I was in banking, I mean, it's not as if I was doing hedge fund management, I did asset management, I did private banking, I did some private equity on the investment side. So I never consider myself as a specialist. I'm not a coder, I'm not a developer, I'm not a designer. etc. It depends on your personality. My sister is an architect. She's not a business person at all. She's a very creative person, so the role fits her very well, and she's doing very good at it. In your case, what I would say is, if there was something I would have done in my years, I would have been a computer science person. I would have liked to be a technical person and be someone who can actually build my own ideas instead of relying on others to build them. Today you have to look where the world is taking us, right? A lot of jobs, I think what you should be worried about and what we worry about today is obviously the rise of machine learning, artificial intelligence, etc. Because a lot of jobs are going to not be existent 2 years from now. And a lot of these jobs are in the customer success field, content creation, even design, etc. So I would look at what you can do to leverage on those existing technologies. So today we say the new job is going to be a specialist prompter, someone that can work with an AI and how to prompt it and how to get it to give you that result. It's no longer the person coding, because the AI can give you the line of code. It's how do you get the perfect results for that. So I really can't answer your question. I was a generalist. It really depends on you as a person, what's your type of character, also what you want to do, and what you're good at. But obviously being a generalist in your first couple of years, it will open your mind to what you want to become, because you might not hit it the right time, the first time being in the right job you want or what you think you are. For your brother, I'll give you the answer that hurts. Either you leave or you let them go. You will not be able, if you don't share the same vision, again, it will be very painful. Now, obviously, you should be able to, if you have a vision, to share that vision, to explain why this is your vision, and come to a common understanding, or each one should be able to pitch their own vision and maybe find a common one. But if you cannot be in agreement, there's no point in continuing. It's either you find other people, or you might be convinced, you get convinced that your vision is not the right one. And usually vision, very often are usually not backed by hard scientific data, right? It's a lot of assumptions, it's a lot of ifs. But it's very important to share the same vision. And today, I think if we didn't share the same vision with my two co-founders, we most probably would have parted ways. But we are still stuck. We might not agree on everything, and we don't agree on many things. And we divide roles and responsibilities. And we might not agree in the next 3 months the strategy, but the vision is still the same. We want to democratize money transfers, and we want to enable financial inclusion. How we get there, there's many ways to get there. And you never know which one is right or wrong. But if you don't share the same vision, it's a lost cause usually.
So I guess we ran out of time. Thank you so much, Karl, for being here. I guess the audience already showed their interest by asking you questions. I mean, your story is very inspiring, and whatever you do. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. And thanks for staying in this room with no light or natural light for the last hour and a half. And look, we look for talent at Purpl, right? One of the reasons I'm also here is a bit of a selfish reason, is that we are obviously looking for new talents to join the team. We are growing. I hope I did not scare you too much, but inspire you about. It's not about being an entrepreneur or not. It's if you have an idea and you believe in that idea, I think call it whatever you want to call yourself. Pursue that idea. Actually, if I had done it sooner, I would still think about being able to do a few more other startups, but I'm not getting any younger, so it becomes harder and harder because you want to have other responsibilities to eventually. So start the soonest, and don't be afraid to fail. I failed technically 3 times, right? So this is hopefully the one that will work, and if not, I'll see if I have it in me to start again. And if not, you build an experience that a lot of people value. So being an entrepreneur